All right, so welcome to the Resilient Farming TAS Lunch and Learn webinar series. To kick off today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Lutruwita, Tasmania, the Palawa and the Pakana, the Tasmanian Aboriginal people. We at Resilient Farming TAS and RMCG recognise their continuing connection to land, water, culture, and pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and we acknowledge their emerging leaders. Today, Sam, who's my colleague here today and will be presenting, and I are located on the Kanamaluka River Tamar on the lands of the three tribal groups, the Letimariner, the Panier, and the Tira Nora Paner. So these series, Lunch and Learn, are short snippets deep diving into topics that essentially relate to resilient farming. They will direct more information to our resource platform, and also people who are participating in the program can work with their coach to develop more skills within this area. For those of you new to Resilient Farming TAS, this is the Tasmanian Farm Business Resilience Program, which is co-funded through the federal government and the Drought Fund, as well as the Tasmanian government. The program essentially works with individual farm businesses to assess risks and make an action plan. Participants, they have an experience which includes a farm visit, access to events and a resource platform, and working with a coach to essentially curate the right information, link them with the right experts, and in the end, put words to a page and make an action plan to improve resilience. So today's topic on biodiversity markets was identified as an area of interest and confusion to several of our current participants. And so I'll hand over to Sam to take us through some of the research and hopefully bring clarity to a complex topic.
Thank you so much, Isabel. Everyone can hear me okay? Yep. So today's webinar, it is okay to munch. Jonathan did already ask that. Just stay on mute. So I guess the way this will go is we'll have about 15-20 minutes exploring the topic. And then I'll take you through the resources that have been developed for the participants of the RFT program. And then we'll have 20 minutes of a bit of a Q&A. You might like to share some experiences that you've had in natural capital accounting, and then a bit of a where to next. And our last 15 minutes is an optional if people would like to stay on and hear a bit more about the program itself. Or have any questions, then Isabel and myself will be here. So yes, I'm Sam. I've been working on the Resilient Farming Tasmania program since July this year. We also have Isabel, who's with us today, who's the project manager, and Sam Byers joined us as well. So he's also working on the program. So the first person you might have noticed is missing on the left-hand side of my screen here is Atalaya Ferrari. She's sort of our natural capital guru. And she's been doing a lot of research in this space and was going to be delivering this webinar to you today. She's pulled together some really great resources and references that we'll take a look at shortly too. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it, so I'll be delivering her content and doing my very best to answer your questions. But most importantly, getting some feedback, engaging a bit of interest in where we go next with this topic. So this webinar is really a bit of an overview of natural capital accounting. It's a bit of a 101. And Atalaya is really keen to join us for a follow-up session, which we'll talk a bit more about at the end of the presentation. So the aim of today's webinar is to give a bit of an intro to natural capital and natural capital accounting for farmers. We'll look at some of the key terms, concepts, benefits, and components of natural capital accounting. And we'll sort of do that by covering off on 5 key questions or themes, if you like. So we'll look at what is natural capital, what does that mean at the farm scale for accounting, why should growers account for natural capital, how do growers account for natural capital, and what can you do now? So what is natural capital? Everyone from growers to governments is talking about natural capital. But what does it really mean for farmers and the land they manage? So this new term may be popping up everywhere at the moment, but it really refers to things that farmers have been naming and working with for many generations. It's not new. Natural capital is all the living and non-living resources and processes that are essential for sustainable agricultural production. Think soil, water, plants, air, animals, and minerals, along with all of their functions, which have benefits for humans. So while these things support life and form the basis of our economy, their benefits are often not directly accounted for. So that's where there is so much potential in this space. So what does this actually look like at the farm scale? So accounting is a way of measuring and keeping track of the natural resources and services that form the foundation of a farm. So it's quite similar to the way farmers keep track of their finances or equipment. If we're thinking of soil, water, plants, and other parts of the farm ecosystem as assets, like money in a savings account, it really just allows for their value to be estimated and takes into consideration their contribution to not just the business, but the broader community. In formally accounting for these resources and services, farmers can start to see and track how well they're maintaining them, identify any issues and risks early on, and make better decisions to support long-term sustainable productivity. It's a bit like having a natural wealth of a farm clearly counted out so it can be managed wisely both now and into the future. Creating a natural capital account serves two important further functions. So the first being the ability to monitor through repeating the measurements over time to record changes in natural capital. And the second is the ability to report. So through using the accounts to develop statements for external reporting, similar to financial statements, they demonstrate the impacts of managing natural capital to stakeholders. So a statement might look like a summary of the farm's management policies for natural capital, the decisions made to protect it, and how they're investing in it. So it might highlight the benefits to the farm as well as the wider public and showing how practices on the farm meet community and stakeholder expectations. So why should growers account for natural capital? Sustainably managing natural capital on farms creates many benefits for farm businesses, the wider community, and for the environment. If we look at improving soil health, for example, this can lead to productivity gains and reduced input costs for farmers, while local communities might experience better air quality on windy days as erosion's reduced. A key step in enabling the agricultural sector to move towards a more resilient, productive, sustainable, and profitable future is properly valuing natural capital, which is where natural capital accounting can really help. So the accounting provides a concrete documentation of the state of natural capital on farms, allowing farmers and their stakeholders to clearly see where improvements are made and what the benefits are. So in summary, we've listed key 6 reasons why farmers may want to consider creating a natural capital account. So the first being increasing productivity and reducing costs. So by understanding the value of natural assets and the ecosystem services they provide, farmers can provide insight of where they can reduce costs from inputs, so your fertilizers, water, pesticides, or where they can increase crop yields by enhancing ecosystem services. Number 2 is improving decision-making and resource management. So accounting helps farmers identify and measure the value of natural assets on their farm and clearly track and record change. So this allows for a more informed decision-making on asset management. 3 is evidence-based sustainability reporting. So accounting provides a robust method by which farmers can really track their environmental impact and improvements in sustainability. And this can be used to demonstrate compliance with environmental policies and regulations. There is starting to be an increasing demand from supply chains and financial stakeholders for this like transparency and information, particularly on climate and environmental impacts of businesses. And accounting can help to fulfill that need. So risk management. Natural capital accounting can, if you like, shed new light on risks that maybe farmers hadn't really explicitly considered before. So this might include risks such as soil degradation, water shortages, climate-related impacts, pest invasion. And when you start to think about these things, then farmers can really take proactive steps to mitigate these risks. Number 5 is market access. So natural capital accounting may help farmers to access new income streams, such as stewardship payments or carbon credit schemes. And accounting might also position farmers favorably in terms of market access. And we'll probably see more of this as stakeholder and buyer expectations regarding environmental impact increase. Which leads into number 6, which is new revenue streams. So accounting will enable farmers to demonstrate the value of natural capital and the restoration or enhancement works on farm. And this may then help them to access payments such as carbon credits. So the next is how to actually do this, how do growers account for natural capital? So just like financial accounting, natural capital accounting must be completed to a standard method, which needs to be robust, repeatable, and verifiable. It's important to point out that natural capital accounting is still relatively new and continues to evolve. Research institutions, governments, private business, not-for-profits are all operating in this space with a real focus on creating natural capital accounts at national and industry levels. But there's also a lot of progress at the farm level scale, with multiple promising projects underway in different states. And this is where Atelier has really been focusing her research. So there's a whole range of comprehensive resources that have been developed by these projects that explain different approaches to creating a natural capital account. But with so much information out there and a lot more in the pipeline, it's really important to get professional guidance when choosing to undertake a natural capital account because the components might change slightly depending on the approach or the framework used. And probably most importantly, a farm scale natural capital account must be cost effective and fit for purpose and really needs to be designed to provide practical on-ground information that's useful to farm operators. So this means that natural capital accounts will be very different depending on the priorities of the business and their stakeholders. It's certainly not a one-size-fits-all model. However, in saying that, while there are multiple methods, most are based around 4 key components that I will share with you. So we'll all start with stocks. So this looks at the extent and condition of natural capital assets. This is typically in hectares per ecosystem type. This might be, for example, hectares of Eucalyptus obliqua dry forest on farm. And this then allows additions and reductions in ecosystem extent to be recorded between accounting periods. So the condition of the stock then considers both living components, so species richness, forest disturbance, and non-living components. So this is where your soil carbon and water quality might come in. Condition can be measured in different ways. It's often ranked in official categories against an established benchmark for an ecosystem. And so the output might simply be poor, fair, high, very high. Condition can also be assessed by measuring individual components of ecosystem quality. So forest age, number of threatened species, percentage of bare ground. So that leads into physical flows. And so these are the benefits from ecosystem services, which are considered in 3 separate categories. So we have provisioning services, benefits that can be extracted or harvested from ecosystems. So this is the provision of crops, timber, or pasture. So what that might look like in an accounting model is this could be tons of dry forage provided for livestock. Regulating or maintenance services. this refers to the ability of ecosystems to maintain conditions. So this could be things like pollination, pest control, water purification, flow regulation. And in an account, this might look like tons of carbon sequestered in soils or trees, or groundwater percentage as a proxy for erosion control. The last physical flow is cultural services. So this one's an intangible service. So we're talking about provisions that contribute to cultural benefits and community well-being. So this could be recreation, education, visual values, cultural heritage protection. And what that might look like in an account could be the number of educational workshops or visits conducted on a farm, records of protected identified cultural heritage sites, or numbers of participants in farm programs. This leads into monetary flows, which is the financial value of ecosystem services to not just the business, but to society. So the value to the business is private benefits derived from natural capital assets. So this is money made by the business from harvested timber or sales of tickets to an on-farm workshop. And then the value to society is the benefits to the broader society derived from the natural capital assets. So these can be a bit more difficult to quantify, but might include things like the financial value of atmospheric carbon sequestered through vegetation, or environmental restoration costs avoided by society through the regulation of water or control of erosion. So the final step is obligations. And this is a record of all costs to the farm business, of restoration, maintenance, and enhancement works to natural capital. And this account could also include forecasted costs into future years. So, example could be money spent restoring degraded land through planting vegetation or removing weeds, through protecting riparian areas. So I realized that was quite content heavy, but hopefully gives you an appreciation of the complexity of natural capital accounting, and importantly, that there is not one method for all. So I guess in moving forward and looking at what farmers can do now, we have six key take-home messages, if you like. So the first being learn about identifying, protecting, and enhancing natural assets on farms. Consider why you would want to undertake natural capital accounting. So there is a risk of jumping into one of these methods without doing the pre-planning and going through that thought process of defining your end goals and the decisions you want the account to inform. And the other end, so who are the stakeholders? Explore options to get involved. So be aware of projects, trials, and look for opportunities in your state. Explore the frameworks available and think about how they might fit with your particular enterprise. Stay informed of developments in natural capital accounting. So even by connecting with local land management groups such as Landcare, and get in touch with leading experts in the field for their advice. Our details are on this slide. And obviously we'll try and get Atalaya to join us at another session. But it is worth pointing out that all six of these dot points can be further explored through the Resilience Farming TAS project. So we're about to launch the natural capital section onto the resource platform, and I'll take you there for a sneak peek. Okay, so you should be looking at our Resilient Farming Tasmania classroom. So if you're not familiar with the website, this is, I guess, the landing page for the participants of the Resilient Farming project. And this is where we keep all of the learning modules and also post information about upcoming events, webinars, workshops. So the natural capital can be found down in the natural environment. So it'll be a new tab. This is still in draft mode, so I think only I can see this until it's actually published. But in here, we just have an overview of things that we've been talking about today. And then Atalaya has put together some really great links and some further resources. So yeah, obviously talked a bit about the fact there are so many different methods in calculating natural capital. So Atalaya has picked, I guess, the ones that she thinks will be most relevant. And I really encourage you to have a look. As we discussed, it's not one method fits all. It's important that you do your own research and think about what you want to get from accounting for your business. But just to show some of these links, some of them are quite extensive. So this is a natural capital handbook. I wouldn't expect anyone to read this cover to cover. But there's also some really great websites that just have some more punchy information. So the Farming for Future was one that Atalaya really encouraged everybody to have a look into. We also will have a fact sheet to be published. This webinar will go on here too. And there's also a glossary coming to the page. So there's a lot of terms thrown around this space. So it's worth having the glossary up your sleeve as you're looking through the other material. So did anybody have any questions? I might not know the answer, but we can certainly throw them to Atalaya and get back to people. But yeah, I'd also like you to have a think about with your questions, are there things that we could cover in a second session and how we could deliver that? And I'm also keen to hear if anyone's been doing their own sort of research in this space and has any of their own insights to share.
Jonathan, you've so very orderly put your hand up. So why don't you
Thank you.
kick us off with the question or
It seems like you guys are running a tight ship here, so I thought I'd follow protocol and put my hands up. But yeah, so I mean, so I'm an entomologist working at the Tasmanian Institute for Agriculture. So one of the projects we've been doing the last year or so has been we've been working with Tasmanian Land Conservancy on their revegetation program in the Midlands, Tasmanian Midlands. So they've been revegetating 100 hectares of farmland, basically turning pasture back into some kind of forest. And part of that is restoring the landscape and the health of the landscape, but also helping growers and those kind of broader biodiversity benefits as well and ecosystem services. So I guess from my perspective, I am quite interested in, and we've been doing research on how effectiveness these revegetation schemes are. Like, do they actually promote biodiversity? And we're starting to kind of accumulate some data on that. We've got 1 year of data, but we're hoping to roll this out over a couple more years. So I wonder, is there a place for that data in some of this, in underpinning some of this work that you guys are doing? So we can show that, yeah, when you revegetate a site, there are biodiversity benefits. It might not be quite as good as the remnant forest you're aiming for, but it definitely does something in terms of providing habitat for invertebrates and other stuff as well. So yeah, is there a place for that kind of data in these schemes, and especially for kind of underpinning Tasmanian farmers and their efforts as well?
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. And I think the critical thing there is getting that baseline. So yeah, absolutely, there's a place for that data.
Yeah.
And I think too, so Atalaya and I do have some organizations on a bit of a hit list that we would like to approach and see if we could collaborate with in terms of running another event or perhaps visiting some of the properties. that you've spoken about and tying
Yeah,
in the stewardship.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I
Mm.
don't know. Presumably, you guys have had some interactions with Tia, people at Tia over in your, yeah.
Yep.
But certainly something we'd like to hear more about. And our remit really is extending Tasmanian agriculture, and I'd love to see some of these research efforts that we're doing actually result in benefits to growers. Like if this could be used to underpin biodiversity credits or something for them along the line, it would be a really great outcome for the research that we're doing. Um, so a lot of the growers that we've been working with, particularly around Ross, who've done a lot of this revegetation work over the last couple of years, and really extensive stuff. So it'd be great to see them be rewarded in one way or another. I mean, some of them are rewarded in some ways already. Some of them, are wool growers who receive a premium for their products because they have strong environmental credentials. So that's kind of factored into their actual cost. But if there was some kind of like carbon credit scheme as well, I don't know how advanced that is in Australia or in Tasmania, or if people are getting money for biodiversity credits so far.
I think I think it's a really good point, Jonathan, to want to highlight and give credit to the benefits received. I think one thing that would be interesting that you're describing there is concrete evidence that increasing biodiversity has a range of different benefits to the farmers before you hit the monetary market, that the increasing of biodiversity from animals to soil to vegetation provides better growing condition and hence produces a better quality product, i.e.
Mm.
sheep, as you were describing at the moment. And that is a really important angle for people who might be considering biodiversity for different reasons. And then similarly to carbon, the next step in terms of can you transact it into like dollar figure? We definitely as a team, when it comes to carbon credits, would never suggest that approaching carbon credits for the aim of making money it is a good choice. It's always those benefits, soil health benefits, carbon benefits, resilience in pasture, resilience in animals that comes before the dollar figure. But Sam, I don't know where you got to with the research in terms of accreditation and straight up dollars for increasing the biodiversity on farms.
No, that'd be a really good Atelier question.
Yeah, it'd be great to follow up at some point, or even,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are other people in my department who would be interested in this kind of thing as well, in a broader conversation about this. I mean,
There's a few of your department friends here. Michelle, you're also with TR, are you not?
girls in there. She was the one who told me about this.
There you go. Oh, she might be busy having lunch. Um, Jonathan, really good reflections and questions, both following up on the how do you turn it into dollar? Is it worth it? What does it look like? And appreciate the linking in there of the data and the groundwork that you're doing and the desire to, link that research to schemes and actual farming practices. So thanks for that. Did Tessa or Geordie, or Michelle have any questions?
I guess it's not so much a question, but just a comment in regards to what John was saying about sort of, I guess, being incentivized to do the work. I think once the nature repair market comes into effect, hopefully next year, technically, I think that will be a really good incentivization for farmers to actually undertake this natural capital accounting. And yeah, and also, as you said, like it's not about the money in regards to the carbon accounting credits to ACCUs, but it does, yeah, it does incentivize doing the work and getting an outcome. Because like it is a lot of work. Farmers don't just have plenty of times on their hands to go and do this research and get consultancy in. Like it's costly for them. So if they can get a benefit out of it monetary wise, I think it is also beneficial.
Mm. I think that can drive change and application at another level. The danger, as is with the carbon accounting, is if you turn it into ACCUs and then sell it on the market, then they're no longer your benefits to own. And so when you have a premium product, or you want to say that your beef is climate neutral, or you want to just be able to report to, say, your abattoir or your supplier of your efforts, you no longer own them. And so similarly, I would say that with biodiversity credit, if you sell them, they're no longer yours. There's someone else to report on. And I think so much within farming, these accreditation schemes are going to be accounting for it, but owning it yourself is probably going to be a really important thing to stay viable on the market. Like Sam's point, being able to link in with your customers and link in with your suppliers. But also take your point, Tess, and it might be a bit of this and a bit of that ends up being the pathway.
Absolutely.
I guess from my perspective, we do a lot of stuff on farms, work with a range of growers. So my job is predominantly in horticulture. So we do a lot of stuff with pest populations and things like that, and trying to change the way we manage insects on farms. And it's always been very challenging to show experimentally that, if you increase biodiversity on farms, that has benefits for pest control, less, you have to spray less pesticide. It's actually quite a long bow to draw to actually set up the experiment, increase biodiversity, and then see a range of benefits that would encourage a grower to do that. So because you end up increasing lots of stuff on the farm, but the stuff you're increasing isn't necessarily, it's just existing there. It's not necessarily having a huge benefit to your production, eating the pests, stuff like that. You would think it would, but it doesn't always. And so I guess that's why I think that maybe actually valuing biodiversity and having a biodiversity accreditation scheme that would generate income might be a better way to actually encourage growers to do that, because it is hard to produce that evidence.
Good point.
But I mean, this is all very new to me, and it's something I'm kind of very interested in trying to understand. And as you said, there's a lot of terms here that are kind of new to me as well. Trying to get my head around them.
Yeah, and that's the same for the farmers who've kind of asked for this content, saying, God, we were still not across what, greenhouse gas emissions and carbon requirements are on us. And we keep hearing about biodiversity, and they're going, oh, is this another must? Is this another pressure? And so where it can be another benefit and another opportunity, that's quite different from another reporting requirement. Just acknowledging, Michelle, thank you. Your microphone doesn't work, but you said at TIA we've looked at carbon credits for orchards, but the services outweigh any monetary returns on the carbon credits, but not sure if it's the same for biodiversity. So that's an interesting reflection too. So Sam had a question, which was, where to next? I hear both from Tessa and Jonathan that, what does the market look like? What does the money look like? What does biodiversity credit potential look like? And potentially how we're supporting a market and credit with solid data at the background. So is the method robust? What data does it use, and how do they link together as kind of potential avenues? Yeah. Did anyone else have any questions? Geordie, what's cultivate?
Sorry, Isabel. I've mostly jumped on just to get an understanding of some of these different systems in place and changes, and basically what farmers are dealing with, and different industry bodies and stuff like that, so that I can hopefully offer a better service to be able to support the farmers and whatnot, and property holders and rural business and whatnot. So I'm only just starting to roll out my business, being Cultivate. And yes, I've come off the back of 11 years of auditing, doing third-party audits and stuff like that. So hopefully, I'll have some services that I can offer to be able to provide that awareness and whatnot, or who to contact if different ones have got different questions and so on.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing. And would you say, based on your sort of current connection to the landscape, that you're hearing questions in this topic too?
Um, Probably from some of the larger stakeholders and farmers and whatnot, I guess. At this point of time, yeah, look, I guess it's one of those things that's evolving, yeah, early stages at this point of time.
Well, it's interesting that the larger corporations are looking at it. The ones with the funds and the resources, which is good. Someone's got.
Fascinating. Yeah, just this morning I was involved with an organic audit, and just from a consultative perspective, and yes, certainly there was some really positive discussion in regards to exactly this topic that we're looking at, as well as how do we minimise impact to the surrounding environments? What sort of things can we help provide to the communities and stuff like that? A lot of discussion. Yeah.
Thanks. That's interesting to hear. We might draw this to a close if no one else had any other questions. No. Thank you for joining. I hope you find it insightful. I popped a 1-minute survey into our chat. As you know, we're being monitored and evaluated. So at any point where we can have people reflect on the content we deliver, it's really helpful. It helps us direct future training. So yeah, 5 quick questions if you had the time. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Sam, so much for a great presentation, and also in spirit, thank you, Atalaya, for putting the content together. All right, have a lovely day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.